you wrote this book, Open Borders, which is, I think, I was familiar with you before then, would see clips and hear your reference and stuff. I think that was the first book that I read from you.
Mhm.
And it's really a fantastic book. And one of the things I love about it, I should have brought it out. I thought I had it with me. Is it's actually a graphic novel. And so, Zach Weinersmith, I believe, is the illustrator on it, who's
The
known
great Jack
for,
Smith, sure.
yeah. So, maybe just really quickly, what made you go with that route as opposed to something that was just super, just kind of laying it out and with just text?
Here's the main problem that you have as a researcher. You know, there's all this fantastic research, often establishing in a very solid way controversial, surprising, novel claims, but it's so boring that hardly anyone would ever read it. One thing I sit around trying to do is how can I take the research that really matters and get people to pay attention to it? This was an experiment along those lines. What if I were to go and put it into a nonfiction graphic novel? I had read some other ones that I thought were excellent, in particular the Cartoon History of the Universe. So I saw that it could work for some things. And then the question I had for myself was, can I do this? Just because you're a fan doesn't mean that you can do it.
Hmm.
So I did go and make storyboards, and then I did get one of the world's greatest cartoon artists, Zach Weinersmith, the Saturday Morning Breakfast cereal. In terms of the other things I was hoping to do, I noticed that one thing that you can do with this graphic novel format is by combining words and pictures, the old adage, a picture is worth 1,000 words,
Hmm.
you can convey a lot more information in a much shorter amount of time. Furthermore, by making it more fun, you can get people to give you more of their time. So you are basically multiplying two things. One is the amount of learning per minute times the number of minutes that you get. Seems like I was able to get just a lot more out of people and change a lot more minds using this format than I was with other projects that I've done. My other books, let's see, I've one popular science book, two University Press books. They've done well, but I think that in terms of sheer power persuasion, this graphic novel is the best that I've ever done.
Yeah, it's an excellent book. I've recommended it to a lot of people. So, maybe focusing on the arguments a little bit. I mean, the book is called Open Borders, and you're making an argument for open borders.
Mm-hmm.
And so, what would you say to those who argue that we're just going to be opening the doors to terrorists and freeloaders if we open our borders?
Yes. I mean, you might say that's a caricature, but that's pretty much what my dad will tell you. Right. I mean, so there's these specific complaints. All right. So you're just opening your doors to terrorists. This is where I'll say, like, terrorism is incredibly rare. The overwhelming majority of immigrants are not terrorists. So to go and act like this is the normal state of affairs or even something that is worthy of more than a very small amount of attention is just wrong. The idea that they're freeloaders, this is one where, first of all, you can just take a look and see that in the United States, immigrants are generally going to have higher labor force participation rates than natives do. But even in countries where they don't, you still have at least reasonably high levels of labor force participation. Whether or not they're going to freeload depends heavily upon whether the law allows them. So yeah, in Sweden, you can go there and you can get on welfare and never get off. Right? You can either say, well, this shows that immigration is a stupid idea, or you can say, no, it shows that letting people receive free money for their entire lives is a stupid idea. Maybe you should change that instead of using this as a lame excuse for denying people the right to move and get a job. Or at minimum, you could say there's going to be different standards for migrants versus natives for their access to the welfare state. This is what all common sense would tell you to do. This is what all high immigration countries actually do. So the Gulf monarchies have the most immigration in the world. This does not mean they just go and share their oil money with anybody who shows up. Rather, citizens get the oil money and immigrants go and do a pile of work.
Yeah. So, and maybe I kind of want to start by clearing some of the cobwebs, some of the arguments that you hear from folks, but maybe it'd actually be better to spend a little time just hearing kind of your positive case. Mm-hmm. What are the benefits for open borders? It seems like you've kind of discussed one of them, which is this economic benefits that it brings.
Yeah, I mean, one of the main problems when talking about immigration is people say, well, there's a few arguments for, a few arguments against, who's to say? What I do in this book is say, look, there's one argument that is so big that even if all the other complaints were true, we should still totally do it. Namely, what does immigration do? It takes labor from countries where people's productivity is low and moves it to countries where the productivity is high, which enriches humanity and by an enormous amount. Standard estimate is something like doubling the production of humanity if you could just let anyone take a job anywhere. Why? Well, again, you're multiplying two big things. First of all, the gain in productivity per worker. We know if you go and take someone from Haiti or Nigeria, move to the United States, their productivity multiplies by about a factor of 15. All right. So
Hmm.
if you're making $2,000 a year in Haiti or Nigeria, you're making like $32,000 a year in the United States. It's a $30,000 gain for humanity. It's not like Haiti and Nigeria lose what the U.S. gains. Rather, they lose a little bit from a person leaving. We gain an enormous amount because their labor is so much more productive. So we take that large gain per person and multiply it by plausible estimates of how many would come, which are in the billions over the medium run. You get a large thing times a large thing, and you get a huge thing. And that's where these numbers of doubling the total production of humanity via open borders come from. We're talking about tens of trillions of extra dollars worth of production per year. Once you understand that, then everything else becomes a rounding error by comparison, really. All the other complaints that people have, I have to go and press 1 for English on the ATM machine. Yeah, well, that's not worth trillions of dollars. That's not worth billions. It's not worth millions. It is a very tiny cost, which if you would put a number on it and multiply it by the number of people affected, you could see that it was just a rounding error. The way that I often like to put it is this: 1 trillion minus 1 billion approximately equals a trillion. So that's the main thing you keep in mind. I also do start with the moral argument of telling someone that if just because they're born in Haiti, they have to stay there for their entire life
Yeah.
seems like an awful thing to do to another human being. If someone did that to you, would that be okay? You probably would not think so. And then the question is this the kind of thing where it seems awful, but it actually makes sense when you really look deeper? Or is the kind of thing that seems awful because it really is awful? I say yes, it really is an awful thing to do to another human being.
Yeah.
If it was a matter of if you leave Haiti, you'll spread a plague that will destroy the world. All right, fine. That's a good reason. That's something that you could even imagine going and telling the person, saying, "Look, I understand that it's terrible for you to be in here in Haiti, but you will kill millions of people if you leave. No, sorry. It's really sad that it has to be this way. It's tragic, but there's no other alternative."
Hmm.
That is not the way actual immigration works. What immigrants do is there's large gains. Of course, there's always some drawbacks. There's drawbacks from every kind of progress, every kind of change in society. You can always point to downsides. The reasonable thing is to look at the net, and the net for immigration is not just positive, it is enormously, astronomically positive.
Yeah. Yeah. Speaking of the person from Haiti who's told they can't leave, I mean, it feels very totalitarian
Oh,
to
yeah.
make that kind of
Yes.
argument. In
Yeah.
fact, you know,
I've got some thought experiments where I say, look, suppose that everything that happened to East Germans happened, except it was every other country said you can't leave rather than the government of your own
mm,
country saying you can't leave. So you can't come versus you can't leave. What difference would it really make?
yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, some people say that a country restricting immigration is the same as a person deciding who
Mm-hmm.
can and can't enter their home.
Mm-hmm.
So what I maybe my question about that is, why are those people so stupid, and how are they any different from communists?
Well, I don't think they're stupid.
No, I'm just
Yes,
kidding, but
yes. Don't get me wrong. I mean, like
yeah,
one of the greatest errors in the world of ideas is accusing your opponents of being stupid. Normally, the
yes,
foremost advocate of any view is very intelligent.
correct, yeah,
I will accuse them of lacking perspective or common sense or being conformists, but that does not mean I'm going to call them stupid. I think that's
yeah,
actually very rare. Paul Krugman is a brilliant guy, genius level IQ. He's wrong about a lot of things, but there's no need to make false accusations against his intellect, which is tremendous.
sure. Well, and
Yeah,
maybe that was kind of a
yeah,
tongue in
yeah,
cheek
yeah.
thing, but
But anyway,
yeah,
in terms of where they go wrong, well, this is a case where a reductio ad absurdum is appropriate. You are allowed to say that you can't open up a church in my house. That is, I'm allowed to say you can't open up a church in my house, right? Fine. All right. That therefore, it's okay for a country to say you can't open up a church in the country,
mm,
right? It is fine for me to say you can't have a baby under my roof. Therefore, it's fine for government to say you can't have a baby without government permission.
yeah,
It's fine for me to say you can't open up a store on my property. Therefore, it's fine for government to say you can't open up a store in the country. What is the common thread here? The common thread is that private property means the right to do what you want, even when the government doesn't agree. If you think the government is the rightful owner of your entire country, then yeah, you are a totalitarian socialist. You are not someone who believes in human freedom or private property, right? Really, pretty obviously, like if you actually believe that governments have the right to decide what happens within their borders, then there is really nothing that you should object to that governments of the most totalitarian description do.
Yeah, it's really interesting too, because it is primarily conservatives who are
Mm-hmm.
making this kind of argument, but it is largely a sort of a socialist totalitarian argument.
Yeah.
Which
Like
it's
this is
also,
our country decides what happens in our country.
yeah,
Like that justifies Saudi Arabia.
sure.
Like you can't open up a non-Muslim church in our country. No, because it's our country. We decide what happens here. The whole idea of private property is no, it's not a we, it's a bunch of different I's. It's not one collective decision for a nation. It's millions of decisions for individual property owners. What does open borders amount to? It means that the person that decides whether an immigrant is on a piece of property is the business owner, the merchant, the landowner. And of course, as we know, plenty of these people are more than happy to go and hire immigrants, rent immigrants, have immigrant customers. Of
Yeah,
course they are. Why wouldn't they be?
absolutely. Well, and it's, I mean, essentially the argument is what you might call like a legalistic argument,
Mm-hmm.
which it kind of brings me to this other point. You'll hear oftentimes people say, well, I'm in favor of legal immigration.
Mm-hmm.
Legal immigration is good. It's illegal immigration
Mm-hmm.
that's bad. And the implication is that anything illegal is bad, anything
Mm-hmm.
legal is good. And so, I mean, wouldn't your proposal to make all immigration legal just make it good by definition?
You would think. I have convinced exactly 0 people with this argument because people who say they oppose illegal immigration want to keep most of the illegal immigration illegal. It's not really just a complaint about legality. It's a complaint about we have these great laws that are keeping out immigrants that are not good to have in our country, and then illegal immigrants are preventing our wonderful laws from working, in which usually amounts to, for especially low-skilled immigrants are bad. And I said, look, low-skilled immigrants are great. We need low-skilled workers. They provide very useful skills. So why is it that we would not want to have them here? Like a farmer is a low-skilled worker. Why don't we want more farmers? What's wrong with farming?
Yeah.